Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. Anglo American Platinum suffered a R1 billion negative cash outflow at its loss-making Rustenburg platinum mine in the 6 months to June 30, while the Union section burnt R350 million in the same period. Mining Weekly editor Martin Creamer tells us more. Hi Martin.
Hi Chanel.
Can you provide an overview of the company's results for the 6 months ended June?
You know, ironically, the company's results weren't as bad as I anticipated. You know, with all the unrest in the platinum belt, you'd imagine that productivity would have been badly down in the first 6 months. It was only about 1% down. You would have imagined that the production would have been way out of line, and it was really in line at about 1.8 million ounces. But what one looked at was what the company had requested on January the 15th, where they said to the government, look guys, we're in trouble here, we've got some loss makers, we need to stop the bleeding, we need to restructure operations, close a couple of mines, mothball a couple of shafts, and it could impact quite a lot of people. And they mentioned 14,000 initially, but they were intending to redeploy about 6,000 of those, and many of the rest they were going to offer a reskilling so that they could do a different sort of job, and they were going to keep the retrenchments down to minimum and, you know, go for voluntary separation and, early retirement and things like that. But the government said no, you know, there was a howl of protest, and they weren't allowed to take that managerial action that they were requesting. And when you look at the result of that, the two places where they wanted to do it were at the Rustenburg section and at Union section. Now you get to the Rustenburg section and there's a serious negative cash outflow of R1 billion plus. And then you go to Union, the other place that was the problem child, and you see a cash burn. Well, I'm talking about cash burn here of more than 300 million. So what we're saying is that their proposal being turned down by the government has resulted in a lot of outflow, a negative outflow of cash. Now, to me, this is bad news. And I think it's also bad news from the investor's point of view, because I see some of the commentators in London putting out notes and saying, okay, you know, you say there's no nationalization of your mines. But what is this? Here's, you know, managers aren't allowed to manage. And so this is semi-nationalization. They're calling it semi-nationalization, sort of for the welfare of the state. So I think from an investment point of view, it's beginning to present a bad image. They need to resolve this. I do see a calmness amongst the Amplats, the Anglo American Platinum top management. There's a calmness. I think they are very happy that the government has come four square behind, and they feel that this is just a temporary sojourn, as it were. And of course, miners always look long term. So, you know, they're saying, oh, before the end of the year, everything will be sorted out. That's the sort of prognostication. But one hopes that it will, because there's also an election coming around the corner, and there might be some vested interests who want to drag this right through to, you know, the election period, which probably will be in the April month.
The lucrative Mogalakwena mine is carrying the company. Can you elaborate on that?
You know, that's not so good to have this great money spinner sort of suddenly having to carry the can. You know, without it, they would have been, up the creek without a paddle, because this is an amazing mine. It is more than a bright spot. You know, it's got copper credits and it's got nickel credits, and at times those credits pay for everything. So, you know, the platinum group metals are just one big bottom line addition, and so it is a fantastic mine. But, you know, you need to have all the cylinders firing. And I think that it's hugely fortunate that they've got this, and obviously they will do more with it. It is the greatest platinum mine on the planet, make no mistake. But one, you know, shouldn't over rely on it, because it also has its constraints. So, you know, if this is not ended, or if the hemorrhaging is not ended elsewhere, and it has to carry too much, there will be refinery constraints. There will be capacity constraints, in that there's a lot of base metal there that has to be dealt with, and, you know, the refinery can only do so much, and therefore that constrains you. But I think without actually outlaying any more money, or very little money, they could squeeze another 100,000 ounces out of that, which would be fantastic.
CEO Chris Griffith is also optimistic that the upcoming wage talks will result in constructive dialogue.
Yeah, he really believes that. You can see it in his whole body language. You know, you can see it by the smile on his face. People are calm. You know, they're saying we're working with the government, we're working with Labour. It is working. They won't go to the point of saying they're optimistic. They don't want to over say that they're greatly encouraged. But they do believe that there will be constructive dialogue, which is fantastic when you think of what could happen on the Platinum Belt there, what has happened in the past, and to avoid any violence and a repeat of past performances would be great.
The company's safety performance for the 6 months in June was also the best on record. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's amazing, because you'd think with all the labour unrest, safety would go by the board. This is the best safety performance ever. The lost time injury frequency rate improved, not just marginally, by 24%. I mean, that was unbelievable. And the figures don't mean much to me, but it went from 1.36 to 1.04. I don't know exactly what that means, but apparently it's pretty good. But it was marred. It was marred by one death. And that one death is always one too many, because it just destroys your results. And ironically, the death took place in the part of Rustenburg section that was meant to have been restructured. In other words, they were saying, look, let's deal with this, let's mothball this, and so ironically, that's where the death took place. It's quite sad.
Thank you for chatting to us, Martin.
It's a great pleasure, Chanel.
That's the show for today. Join us again next time for more news and insight into what's happening in the mining world.